Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you for providing me the opportunity. I've got other things that I'm doing, so I've been over this side of the country for a week now. And I'll just say very quickly that I came to my role in the scheme from being the CEO of an organisation in WA where we had focused for the previous couple of decades on working in partnership with people and enabling them to think about what their services were and how we could make it work for them. What will it take? And so I came with a very strong view that that was how it worked best, and that when we did that, we could come up with different ways of enabling people to be part of their community. So, and in WA there was individualised funding. So similar to your ISPs, that was, everyone had an allocated individual amount, and that made it possible for them to think about in more tailored ways about how they could support and enable the person that they love to have the life that they wanted for them. So, so this is not something I've come to recently, and I've, as I'm sure many of you were part of the Every Australian Counts campaign that was one of such a key factor in us having an NDIS. So just a little bit about my background coming into the being part of the NDIA. So I've been leading the self-management project over the last 18 months, and that came about as an acknowledgement that the scheme has a very strong focus on choice and control, and people being able to self-direct the supports that they have through the scheme, and that's about a better life, and self-management is one of the options to do that within the legislation, but the acknowledgement that we need to do a lot better about making it live and real and easy and manageable. So my first thing to do is to refer to all the things that are on the whiteboard here that you've spoken about as your fears and constraints. And I'm not in any way surprised about how quickly you filled the board or about what you have up there in terms of content. So I can acknowledge that there's just one. I thought I'll just see if there's any that I haven't heard before. And the only one that I thought I haven't heard in some form or exactly as you've described it is that you're finding that there's some agencies who are purporting to do things that they don't really know what to do. So I can see who's put that up there, and I'll talk to you later about that. So every other point that is on the whiteboard here is something that I'll acknowledge is real for you and is real for many other people, and that I will give you as much information as I can today and as much reassurance, but I can tell you that some of those issues are not going to go away quickly, but that they are known. And we are working on all of them, and they are legitimate, and I so just basically start by acknowledging all of them. And I will be very, I've got an early slot today, so if there are things that you feel that I've not even addressed in what I've talked about, I only have about 40 minutes when I'll need to do something else on the phone, but otherwise I am here for the day, so make sure you find me if either what I said you didn't feel addressed, something that was up there, or you want some more information. So that's please take up that offer. So I use self-management a little bit more narrowly because within the scheme, it is a bit different to self-direction. Self-direction is what the scheme aims to give absolutely everybody. It's more powerful in the self-management option because there is more flexibility, there is more opportunity. But the notion that everybody has the determined amount of reasonable and necessary supports is able to choose these services is self-direction for everybody, but it's not quite the same in terms of its flexibility and the opportunities for choice and control. So I'll just go through fairly quickly the terminology. We are an organisation that has lots of definitions and acronyms, and that is our reality. So I will just go through quickly and talk about what is described as agency management, plan management, and self-management. So we very deliberately, when we were, my team were providing input to these are called infographics. It was a new digital term for me, but I've just converted it to a slide, but it's somewhere on our website or on your phone as an infographic. But we very deliberately put self-management as number one, because we would like that to be something that everybody has the opportunity to consider, and that because it offers the maximum amount of choice, flexibility and control. So, but you can choose a combination, and that's a very important point for people to be aware of. So for self-management, really you have a bank. So for all of these options, the amount that's in your plan is available and nominated. It's sort of like in our system, it's sitting there with your participant's name on it. And for self-management, it means that you are the person that draws on the account in the bank that's sitting there with that name on it. So you have the opportunity to pay for your supports directly, and you can do that in ways that are more flexible. So you can employ your own staff. You don't have to, or you can pay someone to employ them for you. You have control over and responsibility for your NDIS funds. You can select your preferred service provider, registered or not, and you make value for money decisions in line with your plan goals. So the goals and the nature of your disability support are the two key things that you need to keep in mind when you think about what it is that you can buy with your supports. You are choosing what you buy, and you are paying for them by making a claim from the account that sits in your nominated spot, and you claim through the participant portal. So that's self-management. Plan management is that there's a plan management organisation is able to pay those supports that you choose. They can be from registered or non-registered providers. All those providers will need to just take account of the maximum price in the price guide. So that's one thing that's different from self-management. You are free to negotiate value for money for your supports. You can pay more than the price guide, you can pay less. So it's about, you have that freedom to negotiate. And NDIA managed means that it's still your funds that are allocated for the participant. They are there in the account, but then you are looking to choose from NDIS registered providers, and then you have a service agreement with those providers and a service booking that enables them to claim from that account on your behalf. So I'm going to go on and talk about self-management and some of the resources that are available to assist you. And so Deb has mentioned about the webinar, and that was held 2 weeks ago. And the webinar will shortly be available on the website. So if you weren't able to see it live, which means that you could type in questions, and we did our best to answer quite a lot of questions, then that webinar will be available on our website for you to watch very soon. It went for an hour, and we answered quite a lot of questions, many of them that of a very practical nature, but some really important ones. So only just in time for the webinar that we held, we did get up onto the website the self-management guide. So this slide is the front cover of the guide. And this is been quite a milestone for us as a small team, and I would highly recommend that it's something that you have a look at. You can download it from the website now, and your slides, the last of these slides has the direct link, or there will be printed copies of it that'll be available from NDIS regional offices by about the end of the month. The printed printing takes a little bit longer, so they're not. I don't have a glossy copy yet to show you, but they'll be available through those offices and also from the local area coordination and early intervention partners as well, but probably not until the end of the month. So the guide is really giving you an outline of what the benefits are of self-management. We've talked already about that in the session that Jan and Teresa did this morning. It talks about your responsibilities, and that's sort of really one of the key areas where people said the very first thing that went up on the butcher's paper is if worried about doing the right thing, and I am very conscious that that's something that is very strongly prevalent whenever I talk to groups like yours. So we are looking to be very clear about what your responsibilities are, and most people are worried about doing the wrong thing in terms of what they might make a choice that is really going to make a difference for their participant, and are worried that it might sort of be seen as not the right thing. So I'm just going to spend a little bit of time so we are clear, I think more specific in the guide about what are your responsibilities. It depends a little bit on how you are choosing the strategies that you have with the resources you have in your plan. You have a choice of strategies, and you need to think about the responsibilities will be a bit different depending on how what strategies you choose. So the two key things are being clear about is it relates to the disability of the person whose that strategy is for, and it's about achieving the goal that you have, and that's been recorded in the plan. Now, that doesn't mean that what you've chosen will be recorded in the plan, because that's a decision that's been, the plan allocates the resources that have been determined to be reasonable and necessary. And then you take that plan, and I absolutely will say right up front, actually it was one of the things that didn't quite go on the list, but I'm sure that for those who already got a plan, it's not an easily understood document. So I'll acknowledge that, but what it does say quite clearly, and it might not match exactly the words you used at your planning meeting, but I remain hopeful that it does at least is at least recognisable as the plan that the goals that you spoke about at your planning meeting. and that they are there recorded in the very front page of the plan. So when you're thinking about your strategies to achieve those goals, those are the goals that you really need to say, if I'm doing this, can I explain at a point in time, but I'll come back to, so it's not something you need to ask about at the time that you're implementing your plan, but that you think through, is it something that is related to the person's disability, and that if they didn't have the disability they wouldn't need this thing, or the strategy wouldn't be appropriate, and is it working towards achieving the goal that I have and is recorded in my plan? They are the two really key questions about is it okay? There are a couple of others that are important, but I think people are pretty familiar. It can't be illegal. That's sort of pretty obvious. It can't be things that should be provided by a mainstream service organisation. So it's not something that Medicare should pay for, the health system should pay for. It's available through another government-funded program that's available because we're all citizens. So that's something you do need to think about. It's also important to think that it's about paying family members. That's the other key one that often comes up. So the logic around that is very strong and is very similar to all the state government systems that we had before we had NDIS, is that family relationships need to be focused on being family members and not being challenged and made a different relationship by being paid. So that's important that the funds self-management doesn't. Certainly, it's still very clear that you can't pay family members. So that's a really important one when it comes to doing the right thing. So there's what can I buy with my support? I think, and the feedback we've had from a number of groups like Belonging Matters is that's the page in the guide that people have found the most useful and reassuring. So that's one that I'll particularly draw your attention to. I'll just say a couple of other things to address a couple of points here, because I'm very conscious that the benefit will be for you to ask me questions. So I'm wanting to make absolutely certain that I've left plenty of time for questions. So in terms of particularly not doing the right thing, so what can I buy that if you've answered the questions that are in the guide and you feel confident, and answer those questions yourself or with a peer or with someone from Belonging Matters, my recommendation is that when you're in the process of implementing your plan, unless you're really, really, really in doubt and feel it's right on the edge, in which case maybe the best thing is to say, okay, well, I'll leave that for a later time, my recommendation is this is your plan for the duration of the period that you're going to be using it, and don't go back and ring the 1800 number or go back to the place where your plan was delivered. And I'm saying that because this guide is new. That section on what can I buy with my supports has had a lot of work to make it as flexible and useful for you as self-managers. And at this point, we have got a lot of work to do for that to be understood and implemented by 7,000 NDIA staff and partners, many of whom are quite new and have recently just done their induction training. So I think it's on that list. You got a different answer from different people. I'll anticipate that, and that will be the case for a while yet. So this, what I can buy with my supports, is endorsed by the agency, it's in the guide, use it yourselves. There will be, when people are coming up for their review, that is an opportunity for you to say, I use these supports in this way because this is how it's related to the disability, and this is the goal that it was matching, and this is the outcome that it achieved. So we will be working to enable people to have that information clear, preferably documented, and we will work further on giving you some guidance about how that will be useful to be documented. But certainly we had a reference group meeting of the Independent Advisory Council meeting last week where some very strong advocates and people who are doing self-management, very experienced at it, were saying we will encourage everyone we come in contact with to be actually noting that. We're not talking about an essay, but noting what it is that the rationale for why you've chosen a strategy and thinking through what outcome it achieved. You'll be doing that anyway because you want the outcome. You want the person that your son or daughter or family member to be achieving that goal. So you'll be thinking about that. You'll be looking at it. You'll be if something's not working, you want to change it. And so they're the sorts of things that we will be having planners and local area coordinators asking about and seeking information about at time of review. So that's the opportunity that you'll have for your decision-making logic to be confirmed. There is one other bit of auditing that's happening, and so there are a few people around the country who have been contacted by people from our audit assurance division, and the same. They'll be actually just picking one transaction out of your whole year of planning spending, and asking you for, first of all, the evidence. So that's your receipt or your invoice that you've had to make the claim through the portal, and then just how it related to the goal. So that is underway, and we'll be doing further work on giving you information about, well, what is it that we are doing that enables you to feel that you've got clarity about what it is that you'll be asked in terms of how you spent the money, and so that you will feel safe in doing that, because that's what we want people to do it confidently and creatively, but not feel scared. But I absolutely acknowledge that that is very real and something that I acknowledge. On a related point that's up there about spending the money that you have in your plan and how it's allocated, there's a couple of things there that I think would be important for me to just clarify. Most of the people that are self-managing really want to use the funds that they need. There are circumstances where that doesn't equal the funds they've been given, and you are not alone. And I just encourage the response that this is the vast majority of situations that I know of people who are self-managing. They want to use what they need. They want to use it for what they need it for, and not spend it if it's not required. And the balance about your family life is absolutely critical, and that's where you should go. It's not that helpful to spend, and particularly spend everything, particularly at the end of the cycle. That is actually going to attract our attention pretty soon. It's not I honestly tell you, it's not happening right now, but it's probably coming. That a big spend at the end, right at the end of the plan, is something that is like, that will there'll be some scrutiny of. So don't do that. It's not helpful for you, and it's not helpful for the scheme. In terms of, it's a number of points that came up a number of times about the funds that you do have are not in the right place in your plan. Now, there's two things about that. Some of that might just be, we have core capacity building and capital, and the most flexibility is money in your core budget. Now, there is a system problem that certainly was, some of the barriers identified, that as a self-manager, you can claim and purchase from your core and be flexible right across the core budget. You don't have to spend it in the lines that are described within that core budget. But the system doesn't work that way at the moment. So that's a known problem. It has a fix, but it hasn't happened yet. So you are having to sort of claim money out of core across a range of support types. But really, you just need to feel clear that that's okay, and if required, say, well, that's the problem that showed up as something else than daily activities, because I couldn't claim it against that item. So that's not good, but it is the reality for the moment. So you need, one of the most important things is that your maximum flexibility is in the core budget, and you encourage you to claim from there with just using something in where the dollars are. Where you've got dollars and it's in core, then that's what you should be able to do, and you'll just need to do that through the claiming process. I've probably covered the core points on there. I haven't covered them all, but I think it's better if I pause and make sure that there's plenty of time, still 15 minutes for your questions that I can address specifically.
This might sound a dumb question, but we've been through our planning meeting. We haven't got the plan approved. What does the plan look like when you get it back?
It's a bit hard for me to describe, because what you've heard me say is it's not that easy to understand. It's as easy as we would like for it to be understood, and that is one of the changes that will come soon. It will first, on the very first page, it will tell you, well, actually the letter that comes first, telling you all about it, and then the plan itself has goals on the first page, and what is my life right now, the description on the first page, and then it tells you where the dollars are allocated in these various sections I'm talking about, core, capacity building, and capital. You may not have them all, but I would have. And it will describe if you've requested, it's important to check that when you get your plan that you've got this, if you ask for self-management, that's what is very clearly stated on your plan when you receive it, that it says that you are self-managing those funds. There have been a number of examples. We didn't come up on this particular list, but one good bit of good news is that if you wanted to self-manage and somehow something happened that's not what it said on the plan, it's now not a hard thing. We can do it much more quickly than has been the case over the last 12 or 18 months. We can change the plan management type without it being a full plan review. So that's one thing to check when you first get your plan, that if you wanted to self-manage, that's what it says on the plan that you receive. So probably good to, that's one of the things that's where it's really good to talk to peers. They'll make a choice, but in many circumstances I feel confident that they'll be able to sort of show you what their plan looked like.
Yes. This isn't actually a
question, so I apologise. But I wanted to get in early because we have been self-managing for some time now, and all of those concerns I have found have been addressed in the process. So I understand I was very nervous and anxious also, but it is working very well. And as far as the plan goes, if you're giving them all the information about the person, your son or daughter, you're the one that knows them best. And it's not a lot of work, and it is flexible enough, and it works very, very well. So all those fears have been addressed, and it's not something that people have to, stay awake at night worrying about.
Well, that's great to hear. And I'll summarise that what Maggie was saying is that all of the concerns here are things that, as a person who's doing it in real life, has been able to be confident that they're being addressed, it's doable, and it's not something that takes too much time. And it's much better for you to hear that from someone who's actually doing it than from me. And in our webinar last week, so if you're able to have a look at that, we had a participant who manages, Christy, who manages her own plan, and Jan, who manages her son's plan. And in the periodical that Jan and Deb and Teresa tore up, Jan's story about Jack is in that edition. And both, so a common answer to, it takes a lot of time and it can so it takes away from the role as a family member and so on. It can be a bit more at the beginning. So there is about a reality of just getting started can be a bit of a hump. So that's what Christy said. And but then when you get into a rhythm, then it's not something that you need to worry about taking too long. Many people have said, so I'm this is second hand for me, but that once you get used to it, the portal's okay. It's not. Christy was brave enough to say it was, but if you what did she describe it as? If you can pay your mobile phone bill, then you can use the portal. Now, there's one other question I'll just I'll squeeze in here about support, because it's relevant here. So there's a question about, there is an item that capacity to build your skills to self-manage. So that would be something that's a possibility, that if you really wanted to feel that would be useful for you. That's separate from support coordination, which is a support coordinator, who's a person who may be able to assist you. The answer to that is, it's possible if you get the right support coordinator. It might not be that helpful if the support coordinator isn't actually attuned to looking at the wide variety of possibilities that you as a self-manager have. So people who, and whether you get support coordination or not, you can, most likely if you have a local area coordinator, then that's their role. But it is possible that if you have someone who with more complex and intensive needs, that you will have a support coordinator in your plan rather than be supported through a local area coordinator. So the mix of supports that you might have in your plan that you may find quite helpful in terms of getting set up and then making decisions about strategies is there's a few options, and depending a little bit on the level of complexity of needs of your family member.
Actually, I've got a couple of questions, but the first question is, you made the comment about the big spend at the end of the plan. I find it a bit unrealistic, and you said that it would receive quite a bit of scrutiny. The reality for a lot of families is, particularly like myself, I've got the plan at the beginning of the year. You spend probably the first 3 or 4 months just getting your head around it. It was an actual nightmare, trying Then you kind of start going on the portal and you start, the bills, you have service agreements to set up, quite a few service agreements, meetings. Then you start, paying the bills. I'm sure I'm not alone in this, but I've had issues trying to find staff. I've got a very, very big package. So there's probably a few things that are going to be happening in terms of spending more money towards the latter part of the year. So my plan is probably going to look like.
Oh no.
So I'm trying to say is that's the reality. Is that there is going to be.
That's not what I'm referring to. Is you are not alone in that there's very little expenditure early on in the building. So on 3,000 minutes situation. Getting started, not spending much. Building, spending time but not much money. Then you'll get to a point of where, well, this is probably what we think it's going to look like on a monthly basis, and then that'll go along. That's not what I'm referring to. It's I'm referring to you've got something set up, sort of goes along, and each month you're not spending sort of 1/12 of your fund, and you get to the end and then it looks like that. So it's not the situation you described that I was referring to.
So you're saying what I'm doing is quite.
That's absolutely, that's the vast majority of what's happening is that particularly for self-managers, you've not got everything in place, you're looking, you're looking to do things differently. So that is absolutely typical, and that's not what I was referring to as a sort of big spend at the end. There will be spikes in expenditure, and that's fine. That's to be expected as well.
Particularly when you get bills through for equipment.
Yes, and
which is
so
probably
the
going to
classic and
happen.
how easy is it to explain? Well, that spikes this bit of equipment. So that's typical too.
Sure. Just one other question. You mentioned about not employing family members. I was considering doing that. I don't think my youngest daughter is particularly interested, but why couldn't I employ her through someone like the CPSN rather than paying her directly? Why can't you do that? She could be
that's our legislation, and it really is because she then becomes a support worker or a carer, not a sister, and the sister is the most important relationship for her to have.
I think people did do that previously though, prior to NDIS through ISPs. I think that certainly was the case, and I feel sometimes perhaps a family member is best, particularly if you are having difficulty finding workers. I agree there could be a conflict of interest, but if it's correctly set up and they are employed through somebody like the CPSN.
No, so our legislation is really clear about that.
The Cerebral Palsy Support Network.
Another person for the
question? This may be a bit specialised question, but in employing support workers directly, what is sort of minimum they need to have in terms of, work cover, what?
All right, so that's the question was about what is the minimum when you're employing people directly. It does mean that it's probably an area where you need some expert advice. And every state jurisdiction has that. Any of the resources that you can find on various websites will direct you to that. So you do need to be conscious that you are an employer and you need to satisfy whatever the legal requirements are for employers. So you are an employer. Again, Christy on our webinar is from New South Wales, does that employ them directly, that she described a circumstance where she needed some particularly expert advice and she went off to Fair Work. So it is something that should be conscious of. So it's a balance. You need to be conscious of your legal responsibilities, but it's not something that needs to be so daunting that it can't be done. And there are lots of places to get that specific information.
So
and Deb's having a session this afternoon. We'll cover something.
Okay, so if the the person in question has registered as an NDIS provider with their own little, etc. But that is separate, isn't it? Or isn't it?
Well, if that's registered as a provider, then that means that they've had a whole range of responsibilities, and if you purchase from them, then they are the employer. You are not the employer.
Okay.
If they're a registered provider.
Because you're contracting them.
Yeah.
Right.
You are
So that's
purchasing
slightly
service
different.
from them.
Right.
Very
Okay.
different.
Right.
Now, I think I got the message. Just one more question. Don't feel it's your last opportunity today, though.
You touched on the previous question of the self-management capacity building section in the NDIS schools budget. So something that is meant to help us learn how to learn to self-manage. So our son is nearly 18 and we'd like to get more into self-management for him. At what point could we go to our planner and say, you know, what about this self-management capacity building?
At review. So if you've got a plan
maybe
yet.
like a year earlier, so that we actually
No, don't wait. You can do it. Have you got a plan yet?
Yeah.
Okay, so next review. If you're not doing self-management now, I just be spending the time thinking about what it is that you would do differently and ask. The other, this is a really good point to make with everybody. Think about, you don't necessarily have to take on self-management of all the plan. Many people start with doing a little bit of it. For someone, for an 18-year-old, you want to be really thinking about community participation and employment. And so then they are the sections that for those goals, those supports will be ones that you might want to get the best value out of, and there might be other things that you'd be happy to leave going as they are. So the other option on the slide that I didn't, I mentioned very briefly, is you could have a combination of plan management, agency management, and self-management. But the way things are at the moment, I would just say the short answer to your question is sort it out at the next scheduled review.
So in practical terms, what are we talking about? Is it like an allocation of funding that sends you through a course, or what is it?
Well, it's just some funding, but you can also use your core funding. So it doesn't specify what it is. So it'll be something in your capacity building section of the budget, or you can use core funds to come along and pay for a session like this, which is enabling you to be better skilled at your core management, at your undertaking self-management. So you don't have to have that line item to be able to get some assistance. There's quite a longer answer to that, which I'll say for now, because we're at the wind-up stage of this session. So I'll just flick on, I think that's in your handouts, this page with some resources on it. So the first one is just the general website. The next one is some questions and answers about plan management. And then the next one is the direct link to the guide. But you can just go in through the website and then look up the participants and then a self-management guide. And I have been brave and included on this slide the specific email address that takes you to our team. I'm saying I'm being brave because we are a small team, and right now there's only one person who's actually able to get things off that email address. And she's about to go on parental leave, so we've got to figure out how to pull the emails off it so we can respond.